Welcome back. President Trump will host the first official Board of Peace meeting in Washington today, focusing on the future of the Gaza Strip. Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the European Union, Qatar, Egypt, India, all among the attendees, pledging upwards of $5 billion to rebuild Gaza and committing thousands of personnel to oversee internal stabilization efforts. The president wrote this on Truth Social last night. Hamas must uphold its commitment to full and immediate demilitarization. The Board of Peace will prove to be the most consequential international body in history, and it is my honor to serve as its chairman. Joining me now is the Heritage Foundation Center for National Security fellow and former Pentagon official, Brent Sadler. Brent, good to see you. Welcome back. What are you expecting from this Board of Peace meeting today?
Well, it'd be interesting to see if they decide on any projects in particular or in general concept, how they're going to develop the Gaza so that the Palestinian people see that the path through peace is the best one for their own security and prosperity. You know, over 70 years, they've only known bloodshed as the only path to actually secure a future for themselves, and that has not proven true at all. So this is a new direction. It's very, I guess, very optimistic to see. Yeah,
we're looking forward to see what comes out of that as we await next steps on Iran. The U.S. has gathered the most air power in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this morning that the U.S. is, quote, ready to strike Iran, but President Trump has not decided to do so just yet. He's watching this. Nuclear talks will resume within the next 2 weeks after round 2 in Geneva, both sides touting progress and agreements on the few general principles. But they're far apart on the major concessions. We've yet to hear from Iran saying that it will not support terrorist proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah. VP J.D. Vance said this about Tuesday's meeting. Watch this.
We would very much like, as the president has said, to resolve this through a conversation and a diplomatic negotiation, but the president has all options on the table. In some ways it went well. They agreed to meet afterwards, but in other ways it was very clear that the president has set some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through. So we're going to keep on working it. Everything is on the table. We certainly want Iran to stop being a state sponsor of terrorism. They're one of the world's largest state sponsors of terrorism. There are a lot of ways in which they endanger America's national security, but the most important way they could is if they acquired a nuclear weapon, and that is the red line the president of the United States has consistently set. Our goal is to make sure that doesn't happen, and again, the president has a lot of tools in the toolkit to make sure that doesn't happen.
Brent, how do you see this? The vice president on with Martha McCallum this week on set. How do you see things?
Yeah, the vice president was underscoring the longstanding request and demands from the United States, which are, you know, this is what the Iranians are refusing to acknowledge or to actually make any meaningful movement on. And so it's clear that the regime in Tehran is trying to play for time in the hope that the United States loses the momentum or the energy to sustain the pressure. I think that's horribly misguided as the U.S. builds military forces to provide the president the option for a sustained. This is not a targeted strike that looks like the president is wanting to have the option, and one hopefully that goes after the centers of power of this regime to give the Iranian people, over 30,000 of which were murdered in the streets and right now are being rounded up piecemeal by the IRGC and security services, to give them the opportunity, the space to choose a new regime, a new government, and a new direction that is one that Israel, the United States, can live peacefully with.
Well, it's a good point that you make with the IRGC, because even if the U.S. were to go in there and take down Khomeini, doesn't the IRGC take over immediately? And is that even worse?
It's hard to imagine anything worse. I think the IRGC, if they are removed from their ability to raise money and have any type of authority, and you start to see a fracturing of the country, then I think you see them actually having to vacate the country and a better future. The best model to look at as to how this most likely unfolds is the 1979 revolution. It was fractured. It had surges and ebbs of activity and violence. Yeah. And then finally, it took a while after, you know, Khomeini, the first Ayatollah, came back from Iraq to unify under this religious, I guess, thematics. And so if the Iranian people can find a common theme, a common interest, and a leader, perhaps Pahlavi can help in that respect on the outside, but it has to be organic. It has to be led by the Iranian people, and it has to be a government and a new direction that the United States and Israel can live peacefully with.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Reza Pahlavi. I've been speaking with the former Crown Prince many times, and he joined me last week. Is there support for Pahlavi to take the reins? Here's what he said in terms of next steps and what he'd like to see done in Iran. Should we actually see a change? He said it would be a transition period, that he would like to take over on a transition period and then ultimately have the people decide and elect the next leader. But it's questionable whether or not we're actually seeing full support by the people. Do you think he has support?
Well, we need to heed the lessons of the past. We can't repeat the mistakes of Afghanistan, and we can't repeat the mistakes in Iraq and the foolish de-Baathification. But right now, I think the model that the administration is wisely taking, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. You have to very deeply understand the target country and the people. In this case, I'm talking about Venezuela, a country that in living memory had a democratic society, and they have a constitution that would allow a path for the people to choose a new direction. It seems to be we're taking the right kind of approach there. Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. Iran will be a similar one, but they have a very flawed governing structure, not any real living memory of a democratic or pluralistic society. So there's going to have to be a transition. The people in Iran don't necessarily know Pahlavi. A lot of the Iranian diaspora do know him, so they have to bridge that gap as well. It's
a good point, because they're young, the large majority, and they don't perhaps remember the Shah of Iran and his leadership. So that's a very important point as well. Brent, great to see you. Thanks very much for your insights here. Brent Sadler joining us.
Thank you.
We've got breaking news this morning. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as the UK's Prince Andrew, reportedly under arrest this morning in England. We've got the breaking news details when we come back. You're watching Mornings with Maria, live on Fox Business. Stay with us.